Well, good morning. Oh, wait, hold on. I'm from the South, so we got to do that one more time. Good morning. There we go. It is such an honor and a privilege to be here in Rhode Island, coming from the dirty South, the deep South of the great state of Louisiana. I must say your weather is a lot better than when I left. It was about 98 degrees when I left my house, so I'm actually enjoying what we like to call winter in Louisiana. So thank you for ushering us into this moment of winter. It is such a pleasure to be here and to think about where we are in this moment and this time. I want to thank Ralph for that wonderful introduction. I think I'm going to have to take him around my district for re-election and just have him introduce me everywhere I go. They help me win again. But I hail from, as you heard from Ralph, from the great city of Baton Rouge, the capital of Louisiana. And there's something a lot of people do not know about Baton Rouge, which it is one of the birthplaces of the civil rights movement that we saw. And so I'm going to take it back to 1953. And we're going to go to a church that literally is down the street from my house. And in Baton Rouge, the city bus system in the 50s and the 60s was about 80% black riders. And the city was facing crises by constantly raising the bus fares from 10 cents to 15 cents, but it also had a serious problem of not allowing the black bus drivers to sit at the front of the bus. And there's a pastor named T.J. Jemison who decided to say, you know what, this is just an unfair system. It makes no sense that in a city of 125,000 people at the time, that black residents who are 80% of the riders had to stand while they watched rows and rows and rows on the bus be empty. And so he decided to really challenge the city council. And he said, it's time to do something important. And so begrudgingly, the city council passed what was known as Ordinance 222, which allowed black riders to take a seat on the bus if there were no white riders present. However, this ordinance kind of went undercover. No one really knew about it, except those advocates and activists who fought hard against it. And almost all white bus drivers knew nothing about it. So I take you to June 15th, 1953, where a woman named Martha Wright, who was my neighbor, decided at 31 years old she was going to take a seat on the bus in one of the white-only sections. This bus driver fussed at her, yelled at her, told her she had to move, and Miss White thought about it for 1 second, and then she said, you know what, no, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to stay on this bus. That bus driver brought nearly every police officer in the city of Baton Rouge to the stop to try to arrest her until Pastor Jameson came and said, you know what, there's a city ordinance, Ordinance 222, and you cannot arrest her. You may kick her off the bus for sitting in the wrong seat, but she's not in violation of the law. And so this infuriated a lot of the white bus drivers. They hated this process, and so it created this kind of movement that started, and Reverend Jameson decided he was going to sit on the bus and he was going to stay in one of the seats until the Louisiana Attorney General decided to take Ordinance 222 to court, saying that it violated what he believed was the segregation laws of Louisiana that said blacks and whites must be separate. And so when Ordinance 222 failed, they were left with a decision. Now, knowing Baton Rouge, most people know about our fighting LSU Tigers, but there is a mighty movement that was created that says, you know what, we're going to now protest this city bus system. And so even though the city was looking at nearly a $1,700 loss every single day, every black person in the city of Baton Rouge decided they were not going to ride that bus. And they started. They met at McKinley Senior High School, which is 2 blocks from my house. And it's a high school that is one of the largest and first one black high schools. And they decided to come together. And they said, you know what, we're not only going to not ride this bus, we're going to show you what innovation means. And so while we all enjoy Uber and Lyft today, I like to remind people the first rideshare program was started in Baton Rouge. When all black people who owned a car decided to drive people to and from work 5 p.m. to 12 p.m. And they constantly did this. Even a gas station owned by a black man decided he was going to sell gas at the wholesale price to ensure that they would see what happened. And under pressure, under fire, with the city infrastructure crumbling, with the budget falling apart, the city council came back and passed ordinance 521, which said that we're going to reserve some segregation, we're going to leave the first 2 rows for whites only, but every other seat on that bus meant that a black person could sit. And then after that ordinance was passed, with the grumbling of some of the community, Reverend Jameson called off the boycott. He said, we have completed one of our victories. But he said, we are not done. And so while others wanted the protest to continue on, he decided to sue. And he said, we're going to fight this in the courts. And while it took 9 years from the moment the bus boycott ended till the moment the courts struck down the segregationist law that allowed separate but equal on the bus system, it showcased the power of the fight. And I told that story because it brings us to this moment, right? It brings us to where we are right now. A moment that requires us to dream. A moment that requires us to dare to do things against the system. And a moment that says, what are we fighting for? Now, Miss White was not just any ordinary citizen. Many of you probably have never heard of her story or before today. Many of us know that the bus boycott, we think about Montgomery, we think about Rosa Parks. But before Rosa sat on that bus, she called Miss Martha White. Martin Luther King Jr. came to Baton Rouge and talked to Reverend T.J. Jennison. And it showcases the power of what local communities do to make a national movement. Now, I would be lying to your face if I told you I felt great about this moment right now that we're in. And my mama said she ain't raised no fool, so I can't lie. I just can't lie. So when people ask me if I'm optimistic for where this country's heading and for what's going on, I tell you absolutely not. Absolutely not. But there's something very important about when you dare to dream. And that's about hope, right? It's about hope. And I think a lot of us confuse hope and optimism as one and the same thing, and they're not. See, optimism is a feeling, right? It's a feeling that things are great, things are going to be great. And as we know right now, we do not feel good. We do not feel good when we see the National Guard marching in our streets. We do not feel good when we see children ripped away from their parents with an ice rink. We do not feel good when we see bills that are passed in Congress to strip us of our health care, of our educational system, and our right. We do not feel good.
That's right. Oh, that's right.
But I tell you why I feel hopeful is because I have what I like to call genuine hope. It is my eyes are wide open to the suffering. It sees the harm that is hitting us. But it knows that when we work together and we do what must be done, that one day one day, we can achieve the goals that we want. And so when I think about this moment, I think about Reverend Jameson, I think about Miss White, because we have been in a moment like this before. We have seen struggles like this before. The question that wrestles with us is, what is our path forward? How do we continue to move on? And I think about Plessy versus Ferguson, one of, I think, the worst rulings of the Supreme Court that we've ever seen in this nation. And the abolitionist Frederick Douglass said after that ruling, he said that this ruling may need and is the necessary link in a chain of events for the predatory downfall and complete overthrow of the entire slave system. Now, what did Frederick mean by that? When he said that he was not taking joy in the fact that Plessy versus Ferguson was ruled on, he was recognizing that this moment is the moment that would inspire the abolitionists, that would give them the power and the understanding and the courage to say, we are going to tear down this system. And so while we look at what's happening at Pennsylvania Avenue, we look what's happening on the National Hill, we can see that instead of retreating from this moment, we should take what Frederick Douglass told us and say, this is the moment to finally bring down a system of inequality. This is the moment to finally take down a system that has pitted poor versus one, and has put black versus white. This is not the time to retreat and hunker down. This is the time that we step up and we fight back.
That's right.
And so when we think about this, we think about the harm that is happening, right? I mean, I know that we are seeing the violence of ICE, but I'm also thinking about the other violence that we don't talk enough about. And that is the message from our foremother, Coretta Scott King, that talked about violence, right? Poverty is violence. Starving a child is violence. Suppressing culture is violence. And so if we are true about our fight, we've got to fight against policy violence that too often has struck so many of us every single day. But when we think about the path forward, there's something else that Coretta Scott King said that I think is so pointed in this moment. She talked about violence and the contempt for equality, or as I talked about, poverty violence, but there was a profound thing that she said that we need to listen in this moment. And she said, the lack of willpower to help humanity is a sick and sinister form of violence. And so, I say all that to say, we know we're in troubled times. And we know the opposition is emboldened. They see power and they are seeking it. But the question that I have for us in the spirit of Coretta is, what is being stolen from us versus what are we giving away? Are we leaving our power on the table because of this system in this moment? We know some of you are nonprofit leaders, you're working in 501c3s. We know that the Trump administration has made us a target.
That's right.
We know that it is now becoming hard to speak out and to do things, but the question is, are we letting our power leave us? And what do we do with our power? I know it seems daunting to say fight the fight, right? I mean, they're risking people to go to jail. They're saying they're going to take away everything. But I kind of got to remind us of Coretta's husband, right? I mean, when we think about his words, he didn't write his words in a holding place, right? He wasn't in a library writing about what needed to happen. He was in jail. He was in jail. Now, I'm not advocating for any of us to go to jail, but in that moment, we got to think that sometimes you got to put yourself in the fire to make something happen for us all. And so when we think of our power and what we have to remember that we hold the power, because power is how we change policy, right? There is no policy that is passed without power. And there's no impact without policy. So when you think about Dr. Jefferson and Miss White, they held their power to change what? Policy. And their policy had a lasting impact on this nation, rippling from Baton Rouge to Montgomery, that turned around and created the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act and brought us on a path of equality and equity and justice. So when you think about yourself, right? You got power. Not each one of you has to be Reverend Jameson, that is organizing and mobilizing a group of people. You don't have to be Miss White, who is the one who decided to sit on the bus and stay. Your power may just be one of the individuals who decided to drive your car and help someone get to work to keep that protest and that boycott moving. But each and every one of us has power, and the question that I keep coming back to is, what do we do with that power? How do we use it? Because our power, I like to say, has 3 P's. It is to provide. It is to protect. But most importantly, it's to profess. And so so what do we do, right? When you think about power, remember, your vote is power. Your vote is power, because what you are doing when you vote is you are just leading and borrowing, letting someone use your power for justice. And if they don't use it for justice, guess what you have? You have the power to take it back. You got the power to take it back, so each vote means something. Each election means something. Each movement means something, because that is the power that you hold. And so I'm reminded, I'm in Louisiana, as you heard, I'm known as a radical, I guess, as some people like to say. I mean, that's just because I like to say it like it is. I get in trouble all the time. I mean, I look the governor in the face, and excuse my French, I called him an asshole straight to his face. I said, I'm sorry. And you know, sometimes that gets me in a little bit of trouble. My grandmother wanted to fuss at me because she said I didn't use enough expletives when I called her. So I'm kind of raised from a little bit of a rebel-rousing family, but it showcases what it means that when we have our power. But so how do we use it, right? I mean, I think about this all the time. We're always struggling to exist in moments because we are afraid of what the opposition will say, what the opposition will do, how will they proceed, right? We are always trying to think, because we are such intellectual people, that we want to understand where we're going. And I remind people all the time, don't be worried about what they say about you, right? As I told you, if you tell me I'm a radical because I care to ensure that no child goes hungry, color me radical. If you want to call me a radical because I believe that everybody has a right to exist in this country, color me a radical. If radical means that we have universal child care, universal housing, a living wage that doesn't push into poverty, guess what? I'm a radical. Right? Be radical. Don't let this moment go by, because we have to understand the meaning of what we are doing. Many of us in this room believe things that we have never seen, right? I mean, we are working towards an inclusive democracy. But I remind people all the time, it is a democracy that has never come to fruition.
That's right.
We are working on dreams here. And when you're working on dreams, it means you have to give yourself the ability to dare to think about it differently. Because we don't want normal, right? We don't want to go back to 2008, as much as we may have loved Barack Obama. That wasn't normal for everybody. Because that wasn't the democracy we wanted. It wasn't the policy future that we deserved. And so we have to be ready to dream a better dream. And I was recently in Brazil, and there was a saying on the wall that I had to chat GPT to try to figure out what it meant. And it said, those who dream beautiful dreams fight better. And so in this moment when you're thinking about how do we fight back, how do we build up, how do we march on, the question isn't about what the opposition is doing. It's about how do you dream. And are you giving yourself the ability and the opportunity to dream better dreams? We, in this moment now, we have to have political and policy imagination for our future. We have to think about where we want to go and how we get there. And it is also a call to remind ourselves that we are in a race. But oftentimes when we talk about policy, I think everybody gets in the mood that we were in a sprint, right? That it is about how fast we can get there, how soon we can accomplish the race. But I often tell people, you got to remind yourself that this work that we are doing is not a sprint, it's not a marathon, it is a relay race. Because our objective is to ensure that the baton gets in the next person's hand. Some of us may be at the front of the race. Some of us may be the closer. Some of us may be in the middle. But our job should not be whether or not we can accomplish that dream, but whether or not we can continue the movement of that dream. Yeah. Right? That was the spirit. You see, Reverend Jameson put that baton in Martin Luther King Jr.'s hand. Miss White put that baton in Rosa Parks' hand, and then they accomplished it. And what did? They put it in somebody else's hand. That is what this moment calls for us. Are we willing to be a Martha White? Are we willing to be a T.J. Jemison? Are we willing to be even one of the forefathers and foremothers of Lyft and Uber who said, I'm just going to drive people to keep this movement going? That is the call, but it is using, as they did, their power. And what I'll close by saying this. There's an old hymn that many of them sung at New Hill Baptist Church where Reverend Jameson preached. And it started off with, we shall not be moved. Right? We're fighting for our freedom. We're fighting for our children. We are black and white together. We shall not be moved. We are going to be planted like a tree that is by the water, because we shall not be moved. Right? So when your power is being questioned, we shall not be moved. When they come for our freedoms, we shall not be moved. When they tell us we can dream, we shall not be moved. When they say that what is right is wrong and what is wrong is right, we shall not be moved. Say it with me. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved in this moment. Because if we dare to dream and we stand planted in those dreams, we got a path forward, y'all. Listen.